event called the Cafe at the Edge of the World. And the Cafe at the Edge of the World online event was happening this week again, that he was a part of, and we could not attend it because we've been here. But it was a part of a wonderful organization called Wolf Willow. And so now I'd just like to take a moment to introduce Tiokasin Ghosthorse. Tiokasin is a member of the Cheyenne River Lakota Nation of South Dakota and has a long history with Indigenous activism and advocacy. He is a visionary. Tiokasin is the founder, host, and executive producer of First Voices Radio, formerly First Voices Indigenous Radio, for the last 30 years in New York City and Seattle, Olympia, Washington. In 2016, he received a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize from the International Institute of Peace Studies and Global Philosophy. Other recent recognitions include Native Arts and Cultures Foundation National Fellowship in Music, National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellowship nominee, Indigenous Music Award nominee for Best Instrumental Album, and National Native American Hall of Fame nominee. He was also recently nominated for nominee for the 2020 Americans for the Arts Johnson Fellowship for Artists Performing Communities. Tiokasin is a perfectly flawed human being. We're here to support you. Please DM us in the chat if you need any support, or email us at onlinesupport@kripalu.org. And it is a profound honor to introduce Tiokasin Ghosthorse. Welcome.
Hello, good morning. If you can hear me, raise your hand or put the up sign, the up sign, there you go. Yeah, that. I'm going to start my video, it says, so I'll punch that, and there I am. Thank you for those of you who are brave enough to show your faces so I can see you. And it's a human factor just to see your faces. Reading names is fine, but also I just want to know if you really know what your name means, because that has meaning. Thank you again for those of you who are able to show your faces. It's good because I like somebody to talk to, not just an alphabet. But I want to say that I'm not a shaman or spiritual leader or guru or medicine person or anything like that. I'm just an Ikjewa Chasha. That's Ikjewa Chasha is a common person. I get to travel because of it. If I was a chief or medicine person, I'd be on my homeland, which Turtle Island is, and I am definitely not there. I live in the Catskill Mountains of New York, upstate. In the video, or the still you saw of me standing in front of the water, was a few years ago when I was facing east, and it was those times when back home they were having ceremony, the sun dances and whatnot during June, July. And so I want to give thanks to those ancestors that come from the Akantu, the earth people, the earth beings from the ancient future now, the common earth people. And the Akantu is part of the definition that I was told. So I'm just going to repeat all the things that I was told growing up on the reservation with my grandfather and grandmother, who were born in the 1800s. You think about that, it must mean I'm very old. Maybe I am. But what they brought and were gifted, they gifted me with I really want to carry that on, that legacy. My mother and my father, my brothers and my sisters, and all the four consciousnesses I call right now the elements, earth, wind, fire, and water. And those are the consciousness that make me think this way. So it's not one of telling you what I know, or one of information. I'm not educated that well in academics, although I do have the degrees, and I don't really kowtow to that thinking, logical thinking from the East, or from the East, out of Athens, that continues presently. So what I'm trying to say is I'm just this person who's wanting to let's, I guess what I'm saying is rather than what I know and information that is present everywhere, it's about what you're thinking or what I'm thinking. It's active, it's now, it's not in the past or the future, it's now. And that keeps me going because I don't want to be lost in the future or the past. I think that would invoke a present phobic language. We're always talking about progress and the making expansionist ideas, making bigger, better, badder, things. And it's almost that we have to speak in unsatisfying language. And in that is the hidden toxic word of progress, manifest destiny. And not really realizing for a lot of people, including myself, that had those jobs that would bring you up very, very much privilege. And in realizing that that was not the answer. And I do know that journey has brought me to here that I said yes to life rather than being afraid of it and what critics or the critical suggestion and ideas that were given to me back then that I could not amount to anything. Well, that was a false flag of success. And I don't measure anything on that ladder of success because it's a distraction. And if anything, I grew up without water and running water, running plumbing and, furnaces and electricity and things like that. It was really a happy time, being very rich, being able to watch the older people plant gardens and watching the garden grow all of us rather than us growing the garden, and watching them sing the song, hearing them sing the songs for each plant. As I am Minikoju and Iktajip Chola, Lakota means planters by the water, and those who do not mark their arrows after they, in this case, shoot bison. And they don't mark the arrows because they gave to those who didn't have. And so the generosity was the first value that I was taught among the Lakota, is one of those values. And of course, that brought about appreciation. So I had an uncle who would always say that appreciation is the highest form of intelligence. And if you think about that, wow, everything just makes sense. Even the mistakes that we make as humans, it's like if we really know, then we won't make it again. But some people choose to make mistakes. And so along with this type of thinking, growing up with these older Lakota people at that time really put within my DNA the ability to see and feel and know spatiality rather than the temporal thought processes that involve concepts. And I say this because, again, I was told that this by my mother, who is 89 years old now. A few years ago, she said that you cannot speak Lakota without intuition. And I find that more true without intuition, because this is what the relations speak: earth, wind, fire, and water, the things that grow on the surface, flowers, trees, humans, animals, everything is in relation. And when I speak from English, it's like I miss the relation. So I come up with connective words, connecting. I want to connect, let's connect, as if I was a robot or someone technical. So relationship really brings it home. Are we related to the rocks? Are related to the water, to the air, to all of those knowing consciousnesses that give us life? And if we disrespect that life, what are we doing to ourselves if that's our consciousness that gave us life? So along the way, I've learned to speak English in a way that it's not comparing, or it's not Lakota. It's not saying that I'm superior or inferior. Excuse me. I'm going to take time out for my allergies to clear. So it's where I thought about, how do I explain this to audiences like you, including those that I just came back from overseas. It's when I explain the paradox. And most people say, what do you mean paradox? Paradox. I said, no, it's a paradox. So in that uncolonial, non-colonial thought process is, there is no word for time, a beginning and an ending. There is no superior or inferior, and there's no cause or effect. In other words, there's no solution or goal. So you see this box being built. You see my hands here, beginning and ending and time. And then there's a cause and effect, inferior. And then there's there's cause and effect, and then there's superior, inferior. And so you have this box, and in that box, you have to extract to bring into it ideas, everything. And that box is purely anthropocentric. I'm sure you know what anthropocentric means, all about only us humans, forget everybody else. It's like a city that just kind of takes energy from the land and to keep it going itself, and all the rationalities to keep a city going when the earth is being depleted. So I'm speaking primarily from the thoughts that when I presented the parabox to a group of nine people in Gothenburg, Sweden, just last week, early last week, there were 3-4 physicists, string theory, entanglement, and other astrophysicists, and these were all physicists, and there was linguists there, there was grad students. So we talked, and I presented in a good way what I could and what little knowledge I have about the language, Lakota language, and I don't say this is for all Lakota or for all indigenous peoples, but my experience is that for indigenous peoples. And I primarily started out with what Uncle would say is, and I've repeated, it's peace with Earth rather than peace on Earth. And because of this is my addition to that. When I was in the middle of in Auschwitz with an uncle who's no longer here, his name is Virgil Killstraight, and we had entered these death camps. We spent a week there in silence most of the days, and one day we decided as a group to move. There must have been 30-40 of us, and so we were moving, and we were getting the history of Birkenau, which is Auschwitz, near that. And as we went in the center, the sun was straight up. Virgil said, we need to stop right here. And so he met myself and him, and he was going to pull out and have a Chanupa ceremony. And so we did that, but people gathered naturally in a circle around us. And so he had me sing a pipe loading song. And so as I was singing, the sun, there was no shadows around us. It was just straight down on us. So we didn't have a shadow. But as I was singing, I looked to the east, and I'm always turning as I sing. And so I turned to the east, and in the east were some fog and a herd of deer, maybe 12 deer, I'd say, a dozen. And of course, there were rabbits all along where the ruins of the death camps were, the buildings that they were there. And there was also birds. And as soon as I start singing, when I was younger, I would just sing loud and just belt from the lungs in my gut. And so I was singing the Lakota song. And the deer all stopped. They all looked with their ears up, every one of them. The rabbits that were there also stopped and turned, and their ears, big ears, were looking. And all the birds stopped, and they were sitting on the wires, fences. And I was just in awe of the power that nature has. And as I finished singing, I noticed that they were still paying attention. And I realized this song is old, very old, much older than any religion. And to hear that it might be a 10, 12, 20, 30, 50,000, even 100,000-year-old song blew me away. And knowing that that culture that is non-Western history, non-European history, that has everybody's history in their clutches, that it needs to be revised according to them and proof according to that. So 200,000 years old, I thought, what is my reference point? Is it 200,000 years old, or is it the 5,000-year-old one that comes out of Greece that dominates the world now? What logic is that? Then as we finished, as I finished, they went back to being deer, birds, and other animals. But at the end of the day, we were at the retreat center, which is a Catholic center in Birkenau, by the way, in Auschwitz. And at the end of the day, another friend of mine and my uncle, wow. So we sat down in the lounge and we were tired. And so I looked at him and I didn't want to ask him, but I did ask him to have some clarity. I said, Uncle, is there a word for domination in Lakota? Right away, without thought. No word for domination. No concept for domination. Because, and this is my thoughts after that, this is what I'm thinking, is because we need a relational language to be in relation with all life, birds, trees, plants, animals, all of those. And I thought, well, if I'm not in relation with them, I'm always going to come up with a connective or connecting language. I want to be connected. Let's connect. Let's network. Let's use all these technical words that seem to be not so natural, that we rationalize that they are. And then I begin to look at the language once more. And wow, verb-based languages, indigenous languages all over the world, verb-based, some up to 95% verbs, without the word domination, without concepts. Now, how do we think about that? Because in the para box, I want instructions. How do we do that? How do we, as if we needed instructions? Because how do we misses intuition. So we described instinctual by this material thing that called the body. Because we always like, let's go inside and, all these things. And I get that. But isn't the outside the same as the inside? So a very different culture. And so again, I was taught in the dilemma of, well, I am a so-called person of color. And I thought, wow, I don't know what that means. I'm not a nominal or a pseudonym to fit the schematic of race or racism. Now, language has a lot to do with what I'm saying here, so please bear with me. If I say the four-letter word race, that's like, is that what we're doing was racing here? So what I did was also think deeper on this. And I thought, well, there's red, yellow, black, and white. And there's also a Christian song that talks about red, yellow, black, and white. But that theology or religion didn't know about the red race when they made it up. And so even that red race, I was like, I'm not red, I'm this color. And so when I thought about the schematic of racism, it's like to put us in groups. And I thought that's very non-Lakota, dividing everything, dominating everything, and thinking those lines of the language. How do you dominate with the language? And one of those thought processes were that the first weapon drawn in war is the first weapon drawn in conflict is language. And so here I am, red, yellow, black, and white, feel like I'm divided, growing up in boarding schools after being removed from my family, diasporic thought processes of trying to always look for relations. And so red, yellow, black, and white didn't fit that feeling I had. It fit the emotion, like of being lost or alone, or as if I had to find somebody to satisfy that temporarily. And so I thought, wow, a person of color, that's not what it is. So you'll hear recently BIPOC, then you'll hear LGBTQ, RSTUV, all those letters. And just recently I said, we're not letter peoples. We aren't those things. We're not those labels. Because a human being comes first. So they're putting us as if we didn't matter, indigenous peoples. We're not even people of color anymore, like at BIPOC. So for those of you who understand this way of thinking, then indigenous peoples, we're not just one people. So we say BIPOC, what is a POC? So I said, okay, I'm a person of culture. POC, person of culture, people of culture. This is why they wanted to group us into the melting pot called multiculturalism. We got to get along and not bite the hand that feeds us mentality. And then again, here I am, and this may, as a person of culture, as a Native person here, as a Lakota, being related to all the other Native people here, before the ships came, I was standing on the shore. I have the view from the shore, and I watched the ships coming, and they're still coming with these ideas of progress and new narrative and new paradigm and new world, just like Columbus. Everything was new. It's back to the drawing board mentality. Let's invent something new. But that invention always needs credit, and it doesn't fit the Lakotas. Like, why do we need credit? Something that belongs to everybody without ownership. And so this language thing has always been, how do they hang on to what's left? And a friend of mine, Vanessa de Oliveira, Machado de Oliveira, who wrote Hospicing Modernity, we talked about that and said, we're speaking of hospicing modernity. We're trying to hang on individually to keep getting what little is left, through religion, through science, through government, because all of those government, science, and religion have authority. So the way I was taught is in either a leader or a follower, but that you're taught to walk with, not just other human beings, but all life. And so what does this society put forward? You need to be a leader. Otherwise, you're going to be a follower. Have your own ideas, the individuality. And if we don't do that, then we're considered socialists or communists, and in this case, Native people. But that's like singling out any ideas, any creativity, because a flower is not just one type of flower, but the language we're making, restrictive binary language, is turning, well, there's this flower and that flower. And that one's red, this one's yellow. So it's the same schematic working beneath us. And it started for me to study history, where it started before the Greek philosophers. Now, mind you, I'm listening to knowledge of the old Lakota people, even before that, and how much we are evolving spiritually. Not because we have technology and we can go up to Mars and it bomb the Earth at the same time. That's not intellectual. That's not intelligence. And we speak this auspicing modernity language to hang on. And with that, the ships who came and are still coming come with a certain survivor language, because they were running from something. Because what happened, and this, all the witches and warlocks, the 12 million of them that were killed because they were Earth people. When we say were, because they have ritual. And the ceremony that I know that they miss, they tell me we don't have ceremony, we have ritual according to a dogma. And that's where domination comes in. And as some of you know, dominate or domo, like freedom, D-O-M, is part of that. Domo or dominate, which is a Sanskrit word of domination, and to continue colonize. So these things are coming on the ships, and they're still coming. They're going to all the other shores, because the false flag of the three-letter word new, and even putting it in a dichotomous viewpoint that, okay, old and new. So it's very, very binary, dualistic. And Earth is not dualistic. Neither is it distance. So what I was taught was shown is that you cannot speak second person or distant person in Lakota. It's always first person. So you address Earth, but you don't say the Earth. You don't objectify or subjectify Earth. Earth is not a noun. And so human beings, what is that being? It means that we are verbs, where there's really no word for I or me or my or mine or ours. There's no possessive. But indeed, if you are a verb, it doesn't mean that we jump up and do the work ethic that came over here and saying we must be doing something so that we become people who are doing. We become human doings rather than human beings. We got to do stuff. And then we leave that behind, yet we look for the success of doing stuff. And another friend, Martine Prechtel, talks about if you are looking to find, I'm paraphrasing, if you're looking to see the work, if you're looking to see your work within your lifetime, am I saying this right? If you're looking to see the results of your work within your lifetime, then you're not worth the people that you come from. And so in these ways, I'm really, every day I'm trying to find a definition in a noun-based language that's very restrictive of verbs. So coming from the feeling, the whole spatiality of information is everywhere, I go back to, and I understand what one ancestor of the Lakota, his name was Black Elk, that people seem to hold up as if he was the ultimate medicine person and spiritual interpreter, when there's hundreds and thousands of other Lakota that feel and think the same thing, is that the center of the universe is everywhere. We don't make land sacred. Land makes us sacred. because we don't think from the domination effect, that we go and make that thou holy. That's just foreign to me. And you see that that flower made me sacred. That tree made me sacred. That rock makes me sacred. That mosquito, all these life forms, even that we think is dead, is really not. But what was given on the ships was that there was death. Yes, there kind of is, and there is life, but one cannot be without the other. And so what happens to Native people is that we take on the colonial cloak, colonial coat. And then for 500 years or so, we are in the colonial coma. We are in a coma. And so there needs to be a place where we start re-emerging as Native people, and that consciousness is coming up. And I often say, because of my academic background and that education, the pieces of paper saying I know something, that definitely the earth is not going to be saved by laying a degree on it. It's going to be those peoples who you see in the fields and that know the earth and not have to measure, at what cost and what not. It's those peoples who are honest with earth, because earth has always been honest with them. Earth does not lie. And so where is the language? Where are these languages? Yes, they may be in the jungles. We don't know, because we don't want to pay attention. We wanted to pay attention to our own sadness of vacancy or dissatisfaction. We got to possess in order to feel like we're somebody or something. And that's the paradox speaking once again. And so this colonial coma also involves a present phobic language. We don't want to be here. We want to be in the future or in the past. We don't want to be here. So you have to think about this language quite a bit. And I was just understanding that, what's the old standard? We go to prayer. I'm not really disrespecting it if I say it this way, that I was told there's no word for prayer in Lakota. You see the Western box kind of like, well, how do you do that? Then you're just, I said, no. Wachekia basically means to acknowledge relationship. That's all it means. So when you're acknowledging relationship, you're in respect with those other life forms that you're relating to, that they are caring for you. These four elements, basic and whatever comes between that, they all are caring for you every second of your life. But in this head thing, this conceptual intellectualism doesn't want to do that, because that's the domination that we kowtow to because of the language. And I'll say this because some of you who are educators out there, in 2008, John Gatto won the New York State Teacher of the Year award. And you can look this up, really. You can look up anything I say if you want to do that way. But he primarily said that it takes 12 years. And he said this on retiring, because after that, 2008, I think he retired. So he said that it takes 12 years. Now think about domination when I say this, and authority. It takes 12 years for the average Western student to learn how to become reflexive to authority. From the first grade to the 12th grade, you're being trained to obey the authority, whether it's religion, science, or government. And people want to think, well, that's the way it's always been, but no, it hasn't. The psychology that's around, with another friend, gosh, I keep forgetting her name. She wrote Hunt, Gather, Parent, Micheline Duclef, who was a scientist for National Public Radio, NPR. And her assignment was to go to 3 cultures. Yeah, 3 cultures, and all of them indigenous. So she went to Mexico, she went to Alaska, and she went to Africa. And in these three cultures, she came natural research. Instead of her going to study these cultures, the cultures were studying her. And so it didn't work out primarily for her to study. She did get some knowledge and things, but she understood that, wow, in the United States, growing up in the United States, there is no culture. We're forcing ideas in other folks to accept what I'll explain later. So Micheline went to Mexico, and she saw how the children were being raised so much different than what she heard. You know, not the dependence on the land, but the land depended on them. The same in Alaska. The land depended on the people because the people were adapting her needs to the human instead of us adapting our needs from her. You see what I mean? And so when she went to all three of these indigenous peoples, she saw that her 2-year-old Lucy, that she took along with her 2 years later, she was totally different. I think she was 4, because she grew up with toys everywhere and totally dissatisfied. She grew up with a soccer mom, everything dissatisfied, and all depended on material. But when she went to these cultures that had no material, basically there were no toys to distract, that there was an involvement, even the youngest one to the oldest one to the grandmother was all together. And there were no locks. And we think that's primitive. But if you understand the scientific aspect that she brought there, it's like she needed to prove it. But yet there was nothing to prove. So you go amongst indigenous peoples, there's nothing to prove. And so she gone to these three, and she came away with understanding that you know, she had to go back into her own society and understand, well, how did we change? Where did we change as, you know, in her case, Occidental people? So as an Occidental person, which meaning white folks in Europe and in the United States, Canada, whatnot, throughout the world, 12% of the population is white, quote unquote. And she saw that, how did we get therapy? How did we do all this, you know? And she came away like with other psychologists saying, well, we started this new psychology in the mid 1800s. There were fragments of it, but not really a formal application of it. And she had saw that even dentists became instant psychologists, because that's not how you raise children, even though mother's been raising children from the beginning, so-called. And so this dentist bent on instilling Christian values about this is how you raise children, and telling the women how to raise children. So this patriarchal psychology came into play, even through Freud and all those, Erik Erikson, Dr. Spock, about how to raise children, men. And she saw that the other psychologies that came out of the new advent of psychology was, wow, these therapies now are applied to 96% of the world, as we're all supposed to standardize and codify our languages, our thoughts, our methods, our cultures, according to this 12% of Occidental people. And you could see the colonization among so-called people of color becoming less and less cultural. And through that is technology. So technology coupled with domination is really leading us to be all just magicians. Now think about this. The etymology of magic, the etymology of magician, the etymology of magi is not the one you read in a dictionary. Some of you scholars might want to go back and find out what magi really means. It's not a genie. Magi primarily means one who uses the tools of the earth properly. And what is a magi? It's a bird, it's a fish. They're using the tools of the earth properly. And with that, they make magic. Now, what are humans doing with our so-called gifts of technology? We are magicians. We're fooling each other. But we cannot fool the earth, cannot fool earth. And I do think about these things. Why is everybody referring, even myself, to the West as if they have the answer and they have all the books? Even find myself being involved with, well, we won't find anything else if we don't read that book, where the tree is right there. Because we want instant gratification, and we want to level that education to qualify us to say that we know something intellectually. Intelligently is the tree. The tree is not intellectual. The tree is intelligent. It has original instructions to it. So in these good ways that I'm trying to describe here, there's a lot of what humanity is facing because of our distancing language. The earth, the planet, the people. I mean, that we always, it's like as if we can point without words. So if you are following me, I would really enjoy that we have conversation. I won't have any answers or solutions. This is a no agenda, because if you make agenda, that's the plan. We're not using intuition. So if we can understand what the intuition is rather than the guess or the hunch or the rolling of the dice, it's still here, it's still available. I think it's just turning things around and looking. We may be facing the right direction, but we're not on the path. There's not just one way. And before I pause here, is also Virgil Gilstrate had gone to the Vatican way back in the 90s and 80s. He visited places, Gilgamesh, all these places in Europe when he was a younger man. And he thought, wow. So he did some research. And in that research at that time, there were 220,000 organized religions, all dogmatic. And he said there was one spirituality. And that's what I'm coming from, saying that I come from the Black Hills. I come from the heart. I never have to journey to the heart. I don't go to the heart. The heart always speaks truth. The head is the magician. So in hearing these things from those older people, all my life, I'm only saying that I'm only repeating what I was shown. Of course, it's not their words, but I'm translating or interpreting what I felt from them, especially when I was 4, and knowing that every one of those old men that were sitting around that drum were only speaking Lakota, singing those songs in Lakota when it was against the law here in the United States for any Native person even to sit in a circle until 1978. That's in my lifetime. And having to have short hair, not speaking our language or singing our songs or even dressing, but only when they designated us to. But that's what I'm saying. People of culture. We are not people of color. So all of us have a culture somewhere. Sometimes it's too hard to go back. You don't have to go back, but it's nice to know where one comes from, because it does change your DNA. And Jessica said something about rewiring. Of course, that's what we need, is rewiring. And I use that technical term because our synapses, we are made of light, electricity, without any new age, anything. applied to that. And it's ongoing. The continuum is being here, always being here, coming out of this colonial coma. So here I am, and I don't know if I've been clear with you or anywhere near coherent. And if I have long spaces between thoughts, maybe it's because I'm still on the plane landing. But I'm here, but I think I should take a break right here and up to Jessica and to Miles to maybe come in and maybe help a little bit as to what happens next. Yeah.
There was one question that came through. I don't know if you want to address that or take the pause break now. But it was, how does Maslow's hierarchy of needs fit into this discussion?
I have no idea who Maslow is. To me, that says, how does Lakota fit in Maslow's theory or hierarchy? Probably because in Lakota, we can swallow that up. There's no room in hierarchy. If the whole land here, as a view from the shore, if our language and so our language of Lakota, and I say a lot of indigenous languages are so inclusive that we welcomed everybody here and still do. That's our language. But yet English doesn't allow us in our own country and our own land. They put us on reservations because there's not room for us. And so we're out of sight, out of mind, because maybe this consciousness is too dangerous, because maybe there's no word for conscience, really. Maybe there's only consciousness like all the life forms. Maybe it's rather not. We know there's an elephant in the room when they want to talk about it, but maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's about who built the room. Whose idea was it to build a room around an elephant? Maybe it's about taking down the room so the elephant can move. Maybe that's what it's about. You see that it's feeding you formulas of decolonize and colonize. These are formulas, very, very dualistic. So it's what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And if that comes from life, not just humans, then how could Maslow fit? Because nature doesn't have hierarchy. You see, Maslow is another one of those folks that came out of that school of psychiatry or psychology. We're all supposed to be this way because when they studied the 12% of those people who discovered, who said that psychologists said, well, the studies that they gave or surveys, the studies were with other white people. They were too afraid to go like Eric Erickson did to the UROC in California for 7 years. They were too afraid to go to Lakota country like Eric Erickson did for 7 years because they were divergent. And he came away with the 8 human values that he said one time Europeans had that. So coming outside of that box of Western psychology, I think is one way. When will we see that there needs to be another language? And the etymology is what I'm speaking about within this language. Maybe that psychology fit back then to survive. How do we survive within the parabox? Because now it's not only about one society saying it's all culture, or this is all, this is how we're all supposed to behave in order to save the earth. And it still doesn't fit because the earth is doing that already. The earth is saving us already. We just have to let her do it. But our control, domination, language, theory, everything from science, religion, and government is to dominate. And so, but I feel that the emergence is evidently coming from when you travel and you see younger people not being guided by that new psychology or the new world mentality, because that's not the answer. If it was, then we wouldn't have to be talking about this. So yeah, so I'm going to stop right there before I start rambling.
So how about we take a moment to do some breakouts, and we do have a question that you can explore while you're in the breakouts. So we'll open those in a moment. And we're all back.
So I'm interested. What is the perfect question? Oh, okay. Naomi has a question. Or is this what we do, Jessica and Miels? Is this what we do now, or what happens here?
Yep. Naomi, if you would like to share your question. So how is this reworking for you? Yes, that is what you discussed in the small group. Is there a takeaway you want to share with everyone? And Jill also said that they appreciate the connections in what has been presented this week.
Tiokasin, would it be okay if we asked folks to share into the space, maybe what they talked about in their breakout rooms?
Yes, I'm very interested. Yes.
Okay, great. Peggy's got her hand up. So Peggy and then Nan, and if anybody wants to share, you can put your hands up and we'll go in that order.
Hi. So, for me, it's very powerful, the entire hour. But in terms of what resonated with me most was toys being a distraction for children. But then for us as adults, I'll speak for myself. It was about working through this Maslow's hierarchy of needs and getting more toys in my mind.
Mhm.
And the fact that we were, we've sometimes it feels like a life wasted chasing things that were so unnecessary.
Wow, Peggy, thank you. That is awesome. And I can't give you a quick answer, but I really know what you're feeling, and maybe we weren't ready for it then. Now we are. And in a way, I'm becoming an elder, if not one already, if that's what they say, but that's a biblical word. What I know an elder to be is one who's experienced life. And in other cultures of indigeneity is that they, a friend just came from Mexico and he's speaking his language, old language, and he said, we don't have a word for elder either. An elder is referred to as a, how do you say it? A tiger lily. Because everything is, you look at life is that's what it is, a tiger lily. It blossoms and gets, and then starts getting older, and then it goes back into the earth. Now that's a beautiful cycle to me. And so, but the energy is the same. As you know, a lot of us who are getting to that area of like thinking about age and whatever, it's like, wow, this energy feels like I'm still a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old. So that energy is not new, it's always there. But we are so stuck in a society that's youth oriented. We always want to go back to the womb. So we go back to spirit, going to spiritual retreats, and we always want to, the makeup, everything is like, keep us young. And how many of us can really afford that? But if we all lived with Earth, everyone could afford it. You see, so it's always there. It's the fact that we have forgotten how to appreciate. And I don't even use the word connection except in the presence of those who understand it. I don't even do the word connection. I just don't. That's a technical word. It's a relationship, bringing it home to like, this is community. This is what it is before government, before science, before education. And I described what education leads you to, the authoritative stance. And even me, I get caught up into that. And so when Peggy has tears, I'm like, wow, intuition was available all the time. It's all around us. Maybe that's the magic. Been waiting for it. And now we as human beings who stop being human doings are understanding what it means to be here. And that continuum, it goes and goes and goes. You can't even understand what forever means anymore. It just goes because we are present with it. So it's like working on this present phobic language. I want to be here. It's not that people say, well, they're talking like, I don't want to be here. I want something better. I want a better world. I want to go to heaven. I want to go to Mars. And this thing is going to help me get there. Right? And it really doesn't. It's a toy. It's a distraction. You don't find life having cell phones and how do I be a tree? How's water? It's not communicating because we are so into magicians, fooling ourselves, fooling everything, even the young people. So everything science has the answer for you. Technology has the answer for you. And I know that's not true. And maybe this will resonate years down the road for you if that's how much time we have left. But no, nothing is a waste. We don't even have the word garbage in Lakota. If that pile over there of compost and whatnot is like, that's like treasure. Like incredible life comes out of that. We don't even have the word for, how do you say it? Dirt. Maka, as told to me by a few older people, is Maka is when you go pick that piece of dirt up, earth, soil, whatever you call it, you pick it up and you look into it, and they say Maka. It doesn't mean dirt or filth or anything like that. It means who we used to be, who we will be, and who we are. That's earth. And how did these unscientific Lakota or indigenous peoples who can sing songs to the earth, regenerate it with these songs, energy, how can they understand it without science, without breaking it down and microscope and then, doing all these, well, it contains minerals and blah, 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 when actually your body's the same. It's very simple. So Maka is that energy. Maka is who we are. And I'm always landing with Earth, because that's the medicine. That's the ultimate. It's not going to be found on Mars. And you say, how do we know? Because we're here. We're not going to find it in a book either. They're fun reading, like, oh, give us theory and give us whatever. But what are you doing? What are you doing? Is it one to know that, oh, I have a book that cut down a tree first to make these things, and then we read about saving a tree by reading a book? Doesn't make sense to me. Or even all these things that we take out of the earth to say that now we can communicate with other life forms, but we're forgetting all the life forms, but we're forgetting how to communicate with here, living with Earth. It's very simple. Wow, I can just go on, and I don't want to turn into any kind of moral policeman, because I'm not that. I just want to say that, humans are meant to be here. And we often hear that the Earth will not survive without us. Then why are we here? We just have to stop trying to save the Earth and allow her to do that. Stop what we're doing with the oil, with the alternative energies, with all these things that came on the ship. Maybe we as indigenous peoples can show all the people that, maybe. I don't know. So maybe just understanding your language now, English language, that's part of it. And it's not that you have to go and learn Lakota. It's like you were given this language, but you need to dig deeper. The etymology of it. Where does it come from? It's Latin. Like 60% of this language we're speaking now is from the Latin. That's a language of domination, the language of war, the language of ownership, patriarchy or matriarchy, duality, distraction, all of these non-earthly natural human being. So we think non-earthly because we want to go to Mars, and technology can take us to the moon and to heaven and all these places, and we don't want to be here. Let's be here. I mean, why are you here if you're not? It seems like it makes common sense. So there's no such thing as wisdom. I'm not a wise person. That's somebody, wisdom is only common sense with Earth. No native person is wise. They only have common sense with Earth, if they do have that. And so what I see out there in the vernacular languages is where there's no reference to Earth first. There's only humans first. So I know that I can't go outside in the morning and address the sun. Well, I do, but tokahe, the makaina, is like you'll go outside and you address the grandfathers and grandmothers, the earth and the sunrise. And I can only say good morning, ihane washtelo, because I'm there in presence of something beautiful happening. So I can't say to another human being, good morning, because that's pretensive language. Because I have to be to really see what beautiful it is. So it's not good morning, Earth. It's like something beautiful is happening because it's a verb language. You see. Wow.
Can we invite another question into the space?
Please.
All right, great. Nan, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. I don't know, Miles, you might have to help. Oh, there she goes.
Thank you so much. The idea of language and how it unifies different groups, separates groups. It's been incredibly helpful to hear about verb-based languages. And it's given me a sense of compassion for those who are forced to use English when what you really want to express is in Lakota, for example. So the whole range of ideas that a verb-based language brings up to me is a major rewire for me. So I just want to thank you for that. And that really is my big takeaway, is that in order for us to be connected and have a relationship, that we have to speak some kind of language that resonates with all of us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nan. And I'm not trying to correct anyone here, because when we say take away, I'm more in a place of, what did you give away? What did you give to the circle rather than what you take away? Did you go to a store to shop or something? So I'm saying, like, what did you give away? That's generosity. Be giving what's been given to you. And I'm going to tell this little story, and I think I told Jessica a little bit about this. There was a conference in 1994 coming out of Franz Boas and Niels Bohr, I think it was, way back in 1908, 1910, 11, 12. These cultural anthropologists back then were in a hurry to save indigenous languages, and they were given funding. And so they were appalled at how much the language they spoke, the science language they spoke, were missing. And Alice Delore, who's a Dakota woman, which is a relation of mine way back when, was their right-hand woman, basically taking the notes. And these notes are in some place in South Dakota under protection, the original notes she took. And what she was writing about was that all of a sudden their funding disappeared, just like overnight. Someone said, this is not what you should be doing. So the studying of these languages stopped because they were afraid there was a different consciousness, since they were trying to colonize Native people and put them on reservations at that time and send them to boarding schools and churches and institutions of higher learning, distraction really from Earth. And so it did that. And then in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a group out of, partly with Yale and part with, from what I understand, out of Banff. They had a conference, and it was on indigenous languages, picking up from where Niels Bohr and Franz Boas had studied that here in New York, New York City. They had arrived at a point where, wow, they also had run out of funding. So they had another conference. And so they arrived there in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1994, 96. And they stuck together for 2 weeks, I think it was. One of the, David Boehm, and the other one was David Pete, I think. One of them was a mentee of Einstein and a student of Einstein. And he had brought forward, coming from the fact that Einstein had visited Hopi and supposedly the Lakota, he had brought forward that what Einstein said, because he had, in 1930, being his younger self, had yet traveling throughout the world in 1930, he came to Hopi because he thought that we needed to, the West needed to understand the remote. They hadn't seen in Arizona. There were no books, no radios, nothing. They were just people living. But he came away from there with this paraphrasing, is that 12-year-old children of the Hopi nation, Hopi people, were the most prepared to understand the theory of relativity because they were living in relation. And so David P., all those folks, David Bohm, came away and they were part of this language, indigenous languages conference, convention. And there were professors and of course, scientists, linguists, and all walks of life. And then there was indigenous peoples, Tiwa, Hopi, Pima, other indigenous folks, Blackfoot, Lakota, all that could participate. And they met and one of the, I think it was David Bohm, he said, I invented 586 word manuscript of verbs, invented all of this. And he came to the conference and he's so eager to present it. But in front of him was this panel of slow talking native people. And the Westerners looking at the time and like, tapping everything's like way impatient. What are we doing? I mean, they're just, what do they know? Basically. And then he decided to listen. So he was listening. And at the end of when the Tiwa, Pima, and other people were speaking, he took his manuscript and put it in the trash can. He says, what am I thinking? I'm inventing anything because they're speaking it. They're living it. It's in their language. And out of that conference came that indigenous peoples from that, and probably others across the world, are also speaking quantum physics in their languages. They didn't have to write quantum physics and math, because this is my proposal now, because I was in Sweden doing the same thing with other scientists and academics and scholars of those disciplines, right? So I presented was Stephen Mangold was his name, who had wrote several books on quantum physics, string theory, and also entanglement, which is a new science. And he wrote back, he said that we aren't ready to understand these indigenous languages because we're still writing them in nouns. And that's what I had told him. You're writing your mathematics and you have to explain them in nouns. And I said, what if you were to understand the language of verbs? You wouldn't need to explain anything in nouns. You wouldn't have to write formulas out and come up with special characters or whatnot. That's the coding of it. So what if you were verbing that encoding into your language? And so I propose that's what's happening, is that maybe if we go back to the etymology of our cultures, not just a language, but of all the aspects of what culture means, that we'll find that encoding within the actions of that particular culture. So it's just not one or the other that has the authority or has the answer. These languages as indigenous peoples comes from the earth, not from the conceptual mind. To speaking all day in an indigenous language without saying one noun, that's still available. So if we're able to do that, and what is that my mom said, 89-year-old mom said, she said, intuition, you cannot speak Lakota without intuition. Intuition is free. Doesn't cost you anything. A dictionary, you can't live a dictionary. So it's a living language. You need to, maybe this living language is available, and if we can understand and live intuition more, it's not a guessing game. We are so far away from that energy of understanding that because of the technical language we speak, that I'm not afraid, but I am thinking that part of that is here. It's all around all the time, because it is. Yeah, so I'll stop right there. I hope I didn't wander too much.
We have Parker Digital who wanted to ask a question.
Parker, digital imaging.
This is Lolita. Um, uh, and shoot, and trying to unmute myself. I forgot what I was thinking, but I put in the chat that this week has, oh, I know what I was thinking. I'm wondering how many people, like my former self, have been institutionalized for having ideas that run counter to a noun-based language. I'm not quite sure. I don't know how, I think, so it just crossed my mind. You know, I live in you don't know, I live in a downtown Boston, and there's been a lot of houseless people who have lived on the street as long as I've lived here. And they have protected my children, you know, because they know my children. Now they know my grandchildren. And I don't know, I'll stop because I'm just so, I'm very soothed, like I said in the chat, that I have found a place during this week for all of these ideas that had me running counter to almost all that I knew growing up in a you know, in the city, with lots of access to land, and how that access to land in Southern California, foothills, in the desert of the West, you know, would bring me back to sanity. And I haven't been there for a year, and I feel it.
Wow. No, thank you, Lolita, right? Thank you. That's awesome. Because it's a yearning. I think that if we understand that the earth misses us, the earth truly misses us, because we're living, um, if you understand boxes, parabox, here we are again. This is a box. I'm looking at you. This is a box. I live in a box. I was born in a box, I guess you'd say, because we had to be, my story was that, you know, we couldn't live as Lakota people. So at that time they would throw the people in jail if you did anything naturally. So we had to go to the public health service, Indian Health Service hospital that had all the modern medical, whatever they had, science. And so without a phone, like I said, or electricity or running water, my mother, who I'm the second oldest, in that time, there was no cars, you know, no phone. Sound like a TV show I once saw. But my father and my grandfather were out hunting on their horses. We lived by a stream, so the water was there. My grandmother and my mother were home, and my older brother, and they had my mother's water broke, and the hospital was 3 miles away. And so she just started waddling to the hospital. She got there, but on the way, she kept saying, hold on, baby, hold on. And so I guess I was listening, because part of that is learning. My first lesson in life was patience. And that's what I think I exhibit that a little bit. So when Earth has patience for you in returning, that's what we're going to do eventually with our bodies. Are we not? And so how do we present ourselves to Mother that she can, you can make Earth proud of you? When's the last time you made Earth proud of you? That you can put you up on a refrigerator with a little star on it. These are like very good little tidbits and for me to help me to get through this. And the Earth always is sane. It's not insane, but even that's the word mixed me up. Insane or sane? I don't get it. I get the meaning, but why did they say it that way? So when I also moved to New York City, and there it is, everything is in boxes. Wow, we die in boxes, we drive in boxes, we fly in boxes, everything is right angle. Even the word right means normal. And where does normal come from? That means right angle. And so we live in right angles. And where is our thought when they're in right angles? They just go nowhere. And so, but when you're in a circular thought pattern, your body is understanding the rhythm, the synchronization of Earth, because that's what she is. She's round. And that's where your thoughts, they just don't stay in that box, they move outside of the box. So be here now is not a new thing to many indigenous peoples. It's hundreds of thousands of years old. But because we're into salvation point mentality, that one person is going to say everything we want to know, because that's the way we've been geared restrictively by a language to be duality, heaven and hell, right and wrong, good and bad, whatever. That's where we are. So it's time that we're coming out, and like it or not, we are going to be outside of the box, because Earth can never be put in that box. So if I'm speaking this way, it's not because I don't know how you think, because I'm speaking that language that kind of says, oh, we're all coming together now and we're going to do this. And maybe we shouldn't come together. Maybe we're good who we are. And that consciousness permeates from the earth, and we're being uploaded in a constant manner, not downloaded. So uploaded. Anagopta is listening to the earth, Maka, to listen to the earth, because it's not, we already know how to listen to the earth. No, earth knows how to listen to us, because she gives us everything from air to water to food, to energy, everything. But we don't know how to listen to earth. We assume that we go to nature to listen to the earth. Well, maybe next time go and listen how she's listening to you. Being appreciative of that. Because you cannot leave earth out. That's the consciousness I'm saying, the relationship of intuition that the earth has all the time. It's free. No one's going to put a label on it, and no one's going to drink it or eat it, although we are. So intuition is free. How about that?
Thank you, Tiokasin. We have another question from, and I'm hoping I pronounce this correctly, Ifontayo. It's been with us for most of the week too, so looking forward to hearing your voice in this space.
Blessings, everyone. It's Efuntayo, and this has been a total pleasure. I apologize, I came in a little late, but in terms of takeaway, for me, it's reinforcement of how I already walk, but it still helps me on a conscious level to go even deeper. I am of the Yoruba tradition, and the core tenet, if you want to call it that, is what they call Iwa Pele. And Iwa Pele is an Elysian, and it means Iwa Ope Ile. And it means I come to greet the earth. And that's the fundamental tenet, and everything emanates from our relationship to the earth. And I think that's in keeping with all Indigenous people. And my prayer and hope is that we all remember that we're all Indigenous people. And that we need to go back and rediscover ourselves and how our ancestors talked to the earth and related to the earth and related to one another, and bring back some of that into the now moment. And I think that will help us to rewire, and to rewire without the notion of guilt or loss or any of those things that we tend to saddle ourselves with. The one thing that really struck me was person of culture. That really resonated. I don't believe I've ever heard that. And to me, it says more than person of color. And although I don't have anything against that, it's just, it's accurate, more accurate to describe. We all have color. We're all various shades of whatever. But culture, it's like the colors of the flower. And all of those hues have something to offer. And I just think that that's so rich. So thank you for that. And also when I think about intuition and listening to the earth, I do believe in listening to the wisdom keepers, which are also the trees, the water, the winged things, the creepy crawlies, all of it. But it's also the grandmothers, the grandfathers, the aunties, the uncles. And what I find, even without knowing all of these various languages, sometimes when I sit in circle or I just sit next to someone that knows or is connected, I get the download. It's something in our DNA that is awakened by their song, by their drum, by their dance. And so it transcends for me language. You just sort of take it in. And so I think it's important that we reconnect. The so-called pandemic did a lot to dismantle some of that. And my prayer and wish is that people again sit in circle in ceremony and just tap into the energy. And that will help to rewire us without all of the machinations that we go through. It just will be easier. So that's my share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tiokasin, I think, I think you're muted. I just asked you to unmute, so you should be, I think you're still muted.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for that little tile. Yeah, I don't know when you came in, but I think I've addressed quite a bit of what you said already, but in a different way. Yes, we are all indigenous peoples, but the etymology of indigenous, what is that? Working with the UN as I did in maybe 20 some odd years ago, you find out that indigenous is not what we are, because indigent, the etymology indigenous is one of these is indigent means poor. Genus means race. And if we're indigenous peoples, defined by the economically material, deprived of economics, and then we're poor people. But I wonder how many of the people if there's 320 million indigenous peoples compared to 8 billion people on planet Earth, how much percentage is that? And how many of those indigenous peoples that refer to themselves as indigenous, in fact, living that way? So it's like, it's another thing because we can acknowledge Native peoples, and it's the new trendy thing to be here on Turtle Island with Turtle Island, but we only go as far as acknowledging them because we don't want to talk about the history, you know, the genocide, the ongoing genocide. And now it's people of color that are doing it to indigenous peoples, because a lot of people of color don't have culture. And that's hard to hear, even say. So the culture that is original from Turtle Island is one for this land. Because sometimes this English that I speak is not for this land. It's like Lakota is not for the Catskills where I live. It's a Lenape. Because my language understands what's going on in what is now the Dakotas and near the Black Hills. And it's easier to apply that and see the stars from there than here in the Catskills. So you see English, which is it's supposedly a one size fits all language. It doesn't go deep enough. So, you know, I think part of that is understanding how far we can go with these ideas using this language. So I really, really do think that part of that is giving rather than taking. Giving. And I really do understand, yeah, because when I say BIPOC, that's new to me. And I shouldn't have to defend myself because this life experience is much different as an indigenous person from Turtle Island. Yeah, so and I was talking with this Resma who wrote my grandmother's hands. I told him, like, no, look, we are people of culture, not people of color. People of culture. And how much is that we're forgetting? So if we understand place now, we don't have to go back and recoup everything. Is that no, what do we have now? And that's not new, that's not old, it's here now. And so being present with his consciousness, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody, it's that I understand the disrespect. And to honor Earth, always first and foremost, because maybe that's what she needs. So anyway, I'm here. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you, and maybe a hard language, but I know somewhere along the line, something gets soft. Yeah, but thank you, Jessica and Mayals, for having me here, and glad to give my time, and it's off to outside where I miss. Yeah.
Tiokasin, thank you so much. I have one more maybe reflection or something that you might leave us with, but I wanted to share that Miles and I, you know, we organized this event and in organizing the event, we send all the presenters a form so that they can put their information on the form so that we have the information that we need to put on the website and share with all of you. And one of the pieces on Tiokasin's form was, please share one of the questions we asked, please share 3 to 5 takeaways that you would like to, you know, offer to this group. And I was I was just struck in my seat by your response to that question. And your response was, I'm not interested in encouraging anybody to take away anything. Like, what can we give? how can we give in this space rather than take away from the space?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to reflect back to you that was from that moment, this session has been speaking to me from that moment in reading your response. I wanted to share my gratitude.
That's so great, because that's the so-called title of this is you cannot awaken someone who's pretending to be awake, because they're using all that trendy language. And that's another distraction. So yeah, I mean, yeah, so thank you so much, and gratitude to you all. Appreciate you, Miels, and Jessica, and all the folks, even though you disagree, that's what we're here for. We need to stir it up a little bit. So thank you. What can I
Thank
say?
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. So we have the weekend to take a pause and to reflect on what we want to bring into this space, how we want to continue to nourish it, and how it can be a regenerative space. And Monday evening, we have an artist in residence, Aisha Shillingford, who will be supporting sort of our integration as we are coming to a close of this summit. And then you'll be taking, new next steps in the next chapter of how you will continue to give into this work. So we are so grateful, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday. There's information, an email will go out, but there's some materials that you might want to have with you for Monday, because there'll be some art that we'll be creating. And Tiokasin, so grateful, and so grateful to everyone in the space that so courageously and bravely shared, and just a beautiful way to sort of close the week, what I feel like has been a week of ceremony. So thank you so much for bringing your presence and your words. That's the right word, but thank you.